I knew it was over the moment Jessica didn't make eye contact. That smug little MBA spawn, fresh off some LinkedIn certified ego trip, sat across from me like I was a quarterly expense report that needed trimming. She smelled like designer athleisure and millennial ambition. And her first words weren't hello or thanks for your service, but let's talk about alignment. Alignment. I'm Mike Patterson, 52 years old, and I'd spent 28 years at TechFlow Industries writing the very code that made their industrial automation systems worth a damn. Started here when I was 24, fresh out of the Army Signal Corps, ready to build something that mattered. Now I was being aligned right out the damn door. She flipped open my personnel file like it was a takeout menu. Look, Mike, you've done solid work. Really, but you've been here a long time. We need people who are agile, adaptable to rapid innovation cycles. She smiled, that reptile kind of smile that never touches the eyes. If you're not excited about our digital transformation roadmap, maybe it's time to explore other opportunities. It wasn't rage, wasn't sadness. What I felt was that bone-deep stillness I learned diffusing IEDs in Desert Storm, the kind where you assess the battlefield before making your move. I looked at the team photo on my desk. 5 of those engineers I'd hired straight out of college. I remembered staying late with them through SCADA system crashes and PLC programming disasters, running on vending machine coffee and determination. I remembered missing my son Danny's state championship game because our main automation cluster failed during a Boeing production run. I remembered fighting for their raises when upper management wanted to freeze salaries after the 2008 recession. Now this 29-year-old kid with an MBA from Northwestern was handing me a metaphorical participation trophy and a real termination folder. The financial reality hit me like a punch to the gut. Mortgage on the house in Naperville, $3,200 a month for 8 more years. Alimony to Sarah, $2,800 monthly until she remarries, which at 49 and bitter about our divorce, wasn't happening soon. Danny's engineering tuition at Illinois, $28,000 a year, 3 years left. And the killer, health insurance. Cobra would cost me $1,400 a month for coverage that expired in 18 months. After that, individual insurance at 52 with my back problems. Good luck. I did the math in my head. Savings would last maybe 14 months if I was careful. But guys my age don't get hired easy in tech. Too expensive, too set in our ways, too close to retirement for companies to invest in training. So I closed my laptop. No drama, no tears. I stood up, tucked the folder under my arm, and walked out. Past my team, past the glassy conference room full of people pretending not to notice. Past the same HR guy who'd once asked me to mentor his nephew. No one said a word. That kind of silence has gravity to it, drags everything down with it. Respect, loyalty, history. But here's the part no one talks about. Sometimes silence is strategy. I didn't go home right away. I went to Murphy's, the sports bar down the street where they still knew my name and my drink, got myself a whiskey neat, and found my usual corner booth. The Cubs were losing on the big screen, which felt appropriate. TechFlow had been my whole adult life. I joined when we were still operating out of a converted warehouse on the south side, 15 guys trying to automate factory processes that nobody understood yet. I'd watched us grow from a prototype company to a $450 million automation powerhouse. And all of it, the SCADA protocols, the PLC integration frameworks, the goddamn foundational control algorithms, had my fingerprints in the code. I didn't just document everything. I lived that code. It wasn't in some manual gathering dust. It was hardwired into every critical system we'd ever deployed. Boeing, Caterpillar, John Deere. They all ran on frameworks I'd designed when Jessica was probably in middle school learning about supply chains from textbooks. I paid the tab in cash. Walked 4 blocks in the wrong direction just to clear my head and think. The November wind cut through my jacket like criticism, but it helped focus my mind. Then I caught a cab. Not an Uber, not a ride share, a damn yellow cab driven by a guy who'd probably been doing this job longer than Jessica had been alive. Home smelled like my German Shepherd, Max, and the faint odor of machine oil from weekend garage projects. I set the termination folder on my kitchen table next to a stack of bills I'd been putting off, poured myself 3 fingers of bourbon, and opened a drawer I hadn't touched in years. Buried beneath tax returns, expired warranties, and a Purple Heart that belonged to my grandfather was a slim manila envelope. No label. just the weight of foresight and military-grade planning. Inside was the original provisional patent application, my name at the top, not TechFlow's, mine. Filed in November 1996, exactly 28 years ago this month, during one of the company's early financial crises, when legal was more focused on staying solvent than tracking intellectual property rights. I'd been advised by Nick Rodriguez, an old Army buddy who'd gotten smart and gone to law school, to file the provisional patent under my own name. We were drinking beer at a VFW bar in Cicero when he told me, "Mike, file it under you. You can always assign it to the company later once they get their act together." They never got their act together. They just got bigger and greedier. TechFlow had been licensing my core automation framework for 28 years under a temporary agreement that nobody in legal had bothered to finalize. Probably because nobody thought the guy in the basement writing SCADA protocols would ever be anything but grateful for steady employment. Now I was holding the deed to the kingdom they'd just kicked me out of. I sat cross-legged on my living room floor like I was back in boot camp, going through equipment inventory, sifting through brittle printouts and coffee-stained technical documentation from the early days. My handwriting from 1996 looked like it belonged to another man, one who still believed loyalty and hard work mattered more than quarterly metrics and synergy buzzwords. Tabs and sticky notes fluttered out like evidence from a cold case. Patent applications, provisional filings, technical specifications for automation protocols that didn't even have names back then. Then I found it. The original provisional patent application, U.S. Patent Application number 008745229, filed November 15, 1996. Inventor, Michael James Patterson. Not TechFlow Industries. Not on behalf of, just me. The cover letter was still attached, written on Nick's law firm letterhead in Times New Roman 12-point font because that's what lawyers used before everything went digital. His advice echoed in my memory like a tactical briefing. "Mike, the company's burning through cash faster than a Humvee burns diesel. File this under your name until their legal department gets organized. You can always transfer it later." Later never came. I opened my laptop and pulled up the USPTO database. Patent number 087,745,002 had been granted full protection in 1998. Status: active. Owner: Michael J. Patterson, individual inventor. Last renewal: 2023, paid in full. TechFlow had been building their entire business on my intellectual property for 28 years under what they assumed was a standard employee invention agreement. But I'd never signed one. In the chaos of those early days when we were all just grateful to have steady paychecks, paperwork fell through the cracks. The temporary licensing agreement was buried in my filing cabinet, carbon copy yellowed with age. 2 pages of basic legal language with one clause that read like an insurance policy nobody expected to collect on. In the event of involuntary termination without cause, all licensing rights shall automatically revert to the original patent holder within 24 hours of formal notification. Signed by me. Signed by James Morrison, TechFlow's original founder who died of a heart attack in 2003. Notarized. Filed with the county clerk. Legal as a military order. Jessica had just handed me the nuclear codes. I pulled out my phone and dialed Nick's number in Montana. He picked up on the second ring, probably because nobody calls landlines anymore unless it's important. "Mike? Jesus, I haven't heard from you in 3 years. How's Chicago treating you?" "They just fired me, Nick." Silence. Then the sound of a chair creaking. "Shit. I'm sorry, brother. You okay financially?" "That's what I'm calling about. Remember that provisional patent you told me to file back in '96? The automation control systems?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Oh, hell, Mike. Please tell me you're not thinking what I think you're thinking. They terminated me without cause today. The reversion clause kicks in automatically. Are you sure about the without cause part? Because if they had any documentation of performance issues, 28 years of perfect reviews, never missed a deadline. The new MBA just wanted to clean house of us old-timers." I could hear Nick typing on a keyboard. "Give me the patent number. 08745,229. More typing. Then a low whistle. "Mike, do you have any idea what this is worth now? I'm looking at TechFlow's recent SEC filings. Their core automation platform generates 78% of their revenue." That's your code, isn't it? Every critical system they've deployed since 1997. And they never formally acquired the patent rights? Kept saying they'd get around to the paperwork. 28 years of, we'll handle it next quarter. Holy shit, Mike. This is huge. What do you want to do? I walked to my kitchen window and looked out at the neighborhood where I'd lived for 15 years. Houses full of people getting up tomorrow to go to jobs that might disappear without warning. Kids who needed college tuition. Mortgages that didn't care about corporate restructuring. I want what's fair, Nick. What's the licensing rate for essential industrial automation IP? For a patent this fundamental? We're looking at 8 to 12% of revenue. Maybe more if it's truly core to their operations. I did the math. TechFlow's revenue last year was $340 million, according to their annual report. 8% of that was $27.2 million per year. Draw up a licensing agreement, market rate, plus penalties for unauthorized use since my termination. Mike, you realize this could bankrupt them if they can't pay? They might try to fight it. Let them fight. I've got 28 years of documentation showing they built their entire business on my work. Every major client deployment, every government contract, every automation system they've sold, it all traces back to protocols I designed. What about settlement? They might offer to buy you out. I thought about my dwindling savings account, about Cobra insurance that would drain $1,400 a month, about competing with 25-year-olds for jobs that paid half what I used to make. I want more than money, Nick. I want a board seat. I want voting rights. I want them to understand that you don't throw away 28 years of institutional knowledge because some MBA thinks disruption is a strategy. Jesus, Mike. You're not just going nuclear, you're going thermonuclear. Sometimes that's the only language people understand. I hung up and opened a beer, the first one I'd had since my doctor told me to watch my blood pressure. Max looked at me from his spot by the back door, probably sensing the shift in the household's energy. Tomorrow morning, TechFlow would discover they no longer had legal access to the automation frameworks that ran their entire business. Tomorrow, every demo would fail. Every client system would be in violation of federal IP law. Every government contract would be in breach. But tonight, I had some phone calls to make. I woke up to the kind of silence that only happens when something fundamental has broken. The sun was barely creeping through my bedroom blinds, casting shadows like prison bars across the ceiling. My phone lay face down on the nightstand, vibrating so violently it sounded like a chainsaw trying to start. When I flipped it over, I didn't see the lock screen, just numbers. 247 missed calls. The notification bar looked like a disaster movie. Red emergency alerts, Slack pings from deactivated accounts, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. 5 urgent emails flagged from TechFlow Legal. 12 messages from former colleagues with subject lines like, "What the hell happened?" and "Call me ASAP." 1 text from my ex-wife Sarah. "Danny's tuition payment bounced. Fix this." I scrolled through without opening anything. Then, like I was checking the weather forecast, I called back the most recent missed call from Hal Brennan, TechFlow's CEO. He picked up before the first ring finished. "Why does the USPTO database list you as the sole owner of our core automation patent? No greeting, no pleasantries, just raw panic barely held in check by 30 years of executive training." I took a sip of coffee that was still too hot, let Max out into the backyard through the sliding door. "Because I've always owned it, Hal. I just let you guys use it." Silence. The kind of silence that costs shareholders money. "Mike, I need you to be very clear with me. Are you saying we don't own the patent rights to our primary product line?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Another pause. I could hear papers shuffling, probably legal documents being pulled from filing cabinets that hadn't been opened in decades. The licensing agreement expired the moment Jessica terminated me without cause. "It's in the contract, Hal. Page 2, paragraph 4. Maybe your legal team should have read it." "Mike, what do you want?" Not "how do we fix this?" Not "let's work something out." Not even "I'm sorry we fired you after 28 years. He already knew none of that mattered anymore. I didn't answer him on the phone. Too important for a conversation that could be recorded. "Check your email in 10 minutes, I said, and hung up. I opened my laptop and created a new document. Subject line, patent licensing terms, non-negotiable. Inside was a bullet point list. Clean, professional, no legal jargon. Exclusive licensing rights for TechFlow Industries to patent number 08745,029. $25 million retroactive royalty payment from termination date. 8% ongoing royalty on all automation-related revenue. Board seat with full voting privileges. 5-year term minimum. Health insurance coverage. Continuation at company expense. Public acknowledgement of contribution to company success. I ended it with one sentence. This offer expires in 72 hours. Then I hit send and made myself breakfast like it was any other Thursday. Scrambled eggs, wheat toast, orange juice. Same thing I'd been eating for 15 years back when I thought loyalty mattered and companies took care of people who built them from nothing. My phone rang again. Nick, calling from Montana. Mike, I've been up all night researching precedent cases. What you're sitting on, it's unprecedented. A single inventor owning the core IP of a public company. The closest case I can find is that guy who owned the intermittent windshield wiper patent and fought Ford for 30 years. How'd that end? He won. $21 million in damages, plus ongoing royalties. But Mike, this is bigger. Your automation protocols are integrated into everything TechFlow sells. They can't just swap out your code and keep operating. I walked to my home office and pulled up TechFlow's client list on my computer. Boeing 737 assembly line automation, John Deere's combine harvester control systems, Caterpillar's excavator hydraulic management, General Motors paint booth robotics, every major industrial client in their portfolio. Nick, if they lose access to my protocols, how long before their systems start failing? Based on what you've told me? Critical failures within 48 hours, complete system collapse within a week. They'd have to shut down every client operation and rebuild from scratch. How long would that take? To reverse engineer 28 years of your work, if they could even do it without infringing on other patents? 3 to 5 years. Minimum. I did the math. TechFlow couldn't survive 3 months without revenue, let alone 3 years. Their quarterly burn rate was $42 million according to their last SEC filing. They had maybe $180 million in cash reserves. The emergency board meeting was called for 2 p.m. I know because my former assistant, Maria, texted me from her personal phone. Entire executive team in crisis mode. Legal team working since 5 a.m. Hal canceled his vacation. I didn't respond. I was busy researching board compensation for technology companies. Average annual pay for board members at companies TechFlow's size, $280,000 plus equity. Not life-changing money, but enough to cover Danny's tuition and keep me comfortable while I figured out what came next. At 3:47 p.m., I got the call. Mike, it's Hal. We've reviewed your terms. And the board has some concerns about the retroactive payment amount. $25 million is 7.4% of your company's current valuation for 28 years of exclusive use of patented technology. That's actually generous. What about ongoing royalties? 8% of revenue would be $27 million annually based on last year's numbers. Still well within industry standards for essential IP licensing. I could hear him breathing, probably doing calculations in his head, trying to figure out if TechFlow could survive paying me what they should have been paying all along. The board seat is non-negotiable, I continued. You want access to my IP? I want input on how it's used. Mike, you have to understand our position. This puts us in a very difficult... Hal, let me stop you right there. I don't have to understand anything. You have 72 hours to accept my terms, or find yourself explaining to your shareholders why your entire product line just became illegal to operate. I hung up and poured myself a bourbon. Outside, the November sun was setting earlier each day, but for the first time in years, I wasn't worried about the darkness coming. The emergency board meeting happened without me, but I heard every detail. Maria texted me updates from her desk outside the conference room like she was reporting from a war zone. Jessica looks like she's about to throw up. Legal team has been here since 6 a.m. with boxes of files. Hal just yelled at someone. First time I've ever seen him lose it. The boardroom at TechFlow held 12 people when full, but today only 9 chairs were occupied. The missing members were the smart ones. They'd probably figured out what was coming and found urgent reasons to be somewhere else. Jessica sat at the far end of the table, her Northwestern MBA confidence replaced by the hollow look of someone who'd just stepped on a landmine. Her laptop was closed. No PowerPoint presentation could fix this mess. The general counsel, Patricia Wong, stood at the head of the table with a stack of documents that represented 28 years of legal oversight. She didn't sit, didn't soften the blow, just read the facts like a coroner delivering a cause of death. Per Section 4, Paragraph B of the original licensing agreement dated November 1996, upon involuntary termination without cause, all rights to patent number 8,745,229 revert to the original patent holder within 24 hours of formal notification. She looked up at faces that had gone pale. The termination notice was filed by HR at 3:47 p.m. on Tuesday. Patent reversion was automatically processed by the USPTO at 3:51 p.m. on Wednesday. One of the board members, a silver-haired man from Sequoia Capital, leaned forward. "Patricia, help me understand. Are you saying we don't own our primary product?" "That's correct. We've been operating under a provisional license that expired upon Mr. Patterson's termination." Jessica finally found her voice. But this wasn't a hostile firing. Mike's performance had declined. He wasn't adapting to modern development practices. The team needed fresh leadership. Hal's response was surgical. "Show me the performance documentation." Jessica opened her laptop, fingers trembling slightly. "Well, his last formal review was... It was positive, but... Show me written warnings. Show me improvement plans. Show me anything that documents cause for termination." Silence. "Because what I see," Hal continued, "is 28 years of perfect reviews, 0 disciplinary actions, and a termination based on your subjective opinion that he wasn't agile enough." The CFO, a numbers guy who'd survived 3 CEOs, spoke next. "What are our options?" Patricia consulted her notes. "Mr. Patterson has submitted licensing terms. $25 million retroactive payment, 8% ongoing royalties, board seat with voting rights." "That's highway robbery," Jessica protested. "That's market rate," Patricia corrected. "I've consulted with 3 IP law firms. For essential technology that generates 78% of our revenue, his terms are actually conservative." The room fell silent, except for the hum of the HVAC system and the distant sound of Chicago traffic 30 floors below. "What happens if we refuse?" asked another board member. "We lose access to all automation protocols. Every client system goes offline. Every government contract goes into breach. Boeing, John Deere, Caterpillar, they all shut down within 48 hours. How long to develop replacement systems? 3 to 5 years. If it's even possible without infringing on other patents." The math was brutal. TechFlow burned $42 million per quarter. They had maybe 6 months of runway without revenue. Even if they could develop new systems, they'd be bankrupt long before completion. Hal looked directly at Jessica. "You've cost us the company." At 6:23 p.m., my phone rang. Hal's voice was different now. Not the panic from the morning, but the resignation of a man who'd just watched his life's work nearly collapse. "Mike, the board has voted to accept your terms. All of them." I didn't celebrate. Didn't gloat. Just asked, "When do I start?" "Board meeting next Thursday. Patricia will handle the paperwork." "Mike, I need you to know." What Jessica did, that wasn't the company. That was one person making a catastrophic mistake. "I appreciate that, Hal. But this isn't about revenge, it's about respect." "I know." "And Mike, welcome back." I hung up and walked to my kitchen window, looking out at the neighborhood where I'd lived for 15 years. Same houses, same streets, but everything felt different now. My phone buzzed with a text from Danny. "Dad, heard about the TechFlow thing. You okay?" I typed back, "More than okay. Your tuition's covered." 3 days later, I received 2 certified letters. The first was from TechFlow's payroll department, a check for $25 million, representing retroactive patent licensing fees. The second was from their legal department, a formal apology and an invitation to rejoin the board of directors. I didn't need the apology. I had something better, a legally binding reminder carved into federal patent records that when you fire the architect, you better make sure you own the blueprints. Jessica submitted her resignation the following Monday. Word through the company grapevine was that she'd already updated her LinkedIn profile, probably looking for another company to disrupt with her fresh thinking. I started my new role the next Thursday, walking into the same building where I'd been escorted out 10 days earlier. But this time, I took the elevator to the executive floor. My new nameplate read, Michael J. Patterson, board member and chief technology advisor. The young engineers still called me Mike. The executives called me Mr. Patterson. The difference mattered. That evening, I sat in my home office. Max curled up beside my chair and opened a bourbon that cost more than my old monthly salary. Outside, Chicago glittered in the November darkness, full of people who'd never know how close they'd come to learning that sometimes the quiet ones are the ones you should worry about most. Because some of us don't burn bridges when we're wronged. We build new ones and we charge tolls. Thanks for listening. And remember, loyalty flows both ways or it doesn't flow at all.